Wyatt Earp, a name etched into the annals of American frontier history, has captivated imaginations for more than 100 years, inspiring cinematic portrayals, musical compositions, and countless public reinterpretations of his exploits. But beyond the captivating legends, who was the true individual? Did he truly embody the larger-than-life persona depicted in popular narratives? While his celebrated achievements are widely known, this heroic figure harbored a darker, more unsettling dimension. Prepare to delve into the violent past of Wyatt Earp, the renowned lawman of Tombstone. From his earliest days, Earp's life was characterized by constant movement. Shortly after his birth, his father, Nicholas, relocated the family westward to California, seeking the promise of abundant farmland and a fresh beginning. The outbreak of the Civil War found the Earp family residing in Pella, Iowa. 3 of Wyatt's elder brothers enlisted in the Union Army, and Wyatt, despite his youthful age of 13, harbored a fervent desire to join them. He repeatedly ran away from home in attempts to enlist, only to be discovered and brought back by his stern father. It is almost a miracle that Wyatt Earp's life unfolded as it did. By the time he reached the age of 21, his family had settled in Lamar, Missouri. While striving to make a living there, he encountered Urilla Sutherland, a young woman with whom he instantly fell in love. Their courtship was brief, culminating in marriage within a year of their first meeting. Together, they purchased a small parcel of land, constructed a home for Urilla, and soon anticipated the arrival of their first child. Their existence appeared to be one of quiet domesticity, but as is often the case with Wyatt Earp's story, this peaceful interlude was not destined to last. Tragedy struck when Urilla contracted the devastating typhoid fever shortly before giving birth. She succumbed to the illness within days, leaving Wyatt bereft of everything he held dear and forever altering his trajectory. In the aftermath of this profound loss, he became known for his hardened demeanor and unyielding resolve. Had his wife survived, the course of Western American history might have been dramatically different. However, destiny evidently had other plans. As a young man, Earp fell in with a company of disreputable individuals and wrongdoers. By his mid-20s, he found himself frequently on the wrong side of the law. Eventually, authorities apprehended him, and Earp was charged with horse theft. A United States Marshal took him into custody and imprisoned him pending trial. Unwilling to passively await his fate, Earp orchestrated an escape from his cell shortly before his sentencing and made his way to Peoria, Illinois. However, his troubles were far from over. Earp quickly gained notoriety in Peoria for all the wrong reasons, becoming a figure of disrepute. The residents of Peoria viewed him as a pariah, earning him the moniker the Peoria Bummer. The respectable citizens of the town grew to despise him, seeing him as the embodiment of a dissolute class of vagrants who tarnished the reputation of their otherwise upstanding community. Little did they realize that this seemingly incorrigible individual would one day ascend to become one of the most celebrated lawmen in the history of the Wild West. Clearly, Earp was not destined to win accolades in Peoria. Upon learning that his brother James was operating a brothel in Wichita, Kansas, he promptly departed for Kansas. Wichita served as a crucial railroad hub at the time, and a vital stopping point for cattle drives originating from Texas. The local law enforcement in Wichita required all the assistance they could procure. It was in Wichita that Earp received his initial exposure to law enforcement duties. After aiding an off-duty police officer in apprehending a group of wagon thieves, Earp soon joined the marshal's office. He now possessed a respectable position and a reliable income. Nevertheless, life as a lawman proved to be anything but straightforward. Earp inherited his father's volatile temperament, which ultimately led to his dismissal from his position in Wichita. Consequently, Earp did what he did best. He departed from Wichita and went to join his brother James, who had established another modest boarding house in Dodge City. He reunited with him there and began anew. Later, in the year 1876, an outlaw named Dirty Dave Rudabaugh stole from the Santa Fe Railroad Company and fled southward towards Texas. This event held significance for Earp for two primary reasons. Firstly, the Dodge City Marshal's office appointed Earp as a temporary deputy U.S. Marshal and dispatched him to apprehend Dirty Dave. Secondly, while pursuing the outlaw, Earp encountered a notorious gambler who had recently played cards with Dirty Dave. This gambler's name was Doc Holliday, and their ensuing conversation marked the inception of Earp's most consequential and enduring friendship. Upon Wyatt Earp's arrival in Dodge City, it was the quintessential Wild West frontier town. However, circumstances in the West could shift with remarkable speed. Within a mere handful of years, the town had undergone a considerable transformation and become more settled. Consequently, lawmen such as Earp found themselves increasingly out of their element. It was around this juncture that he received a letter from his brother Virgil, who had recently established a presence in a burgeoning new settlement in the Arizona Territory. This news was all the impetus Earp needed. In 1879, he gathered his belongings and embarked on the journey to the most legendary chapter of his life, arriving in the newly established mining town of Tombstone. Soon after his arrival in Tombstone, his brother Virgil, who was then serving as a U.S. Marshal, enlisted his assistance in tracking down a band of cowboys who had pilfered 6 mules from the army. This group was known as the Cochise County Cowboys, and their leader was a man named Frank McLaury. McLaury initially agreed to return the stolen mules the following day, but his intentions were far from honorable. The next day, the cowboys appeared in town with the mules conspicuously absent, intending to taunt Virgil and Wyatt Earp. Unbeknownst to them, this act constituted a grave miscalculation. Not long after the mule incident, a contingent of cowboys engaged in further disruptive activities. In the dead of night, 5 members of the gang, led by the notorious Curly Bill Brocious, emerged from a saloon and began firing their revolvers indiscriminately at the sky. The town marshal, Fred White, intervened in an attempt to disarm the men, an action that proved fatal. White seized the barrel of Brocious's revolver, but it discharged, striking him in the groin. It was at this moment that Wyatt Earp, having heard the commotion, arrived on the scene. Earp adopted a more direct approach to apprehending Brocious, striking him forcefully on the head with the butt of his pistol. Fred White succumbed to his injuries shortly thereafter. However, in a peculiar turn of events, White and Brocious had maintained a cordial acquaintance. In his final moments, White reportedly stated that Brocious was not to blame and should not be held responsible. Regardless of White's dying words, the citizens of Tombstone were incensed and sought retribution. Curly Bill Brocious was among the most troublesome of the Cochise County Cowboys. Ironically, he owed his life, at least for the time being, to Wyatt Earp. Confined to a Tombstone jail cell, Brocious faced the wrath of the townspeople, who were clamoring for vengeance. Had he remained in custody, he would undoubtedly have been lynched. However, due to White's plea for leniency, Earp swiftly facilitated Brocious's transfer to the nearby town of Tucson. Earp eventually advanced to the position of deputy sheriff in Tombstone, but his tenure was short-lived. While Wyatt Earp possessed many qualities, political acumen was not among them, and he was ultimately replaced by a man named John Behan. Earp and Behan had a prior history of animosity in Tombstone, and their antagonism intensified considerably once Bean assumed the role of sheriff. Tensions in Tombstone escalated to a critical point, culminating on a particular night in 1881. Around midnight, Doc Holliday and Ike Clanton became embroiled in a heated altercation within one of Tombstone's numerous saloons. Holliday accused Ike of blatant dishonesty, a declaration Ike vehemently contested. At this juncture, Wyatt Earp, having reached his limit with their behavior, ambushed Clanton and struck him on the head with his pistol, a signature Earp maneuver. He confiscated Clanton's revolver and escorted him to the courthouse, where he was fined $25. While the sum itself may seem trivial, the underlying implications extended far beyond mere monetary penalties. The Earps had provoked the ire of one of the most significant members of the Cochise County Cowboys, and the notorious gang was not about to let the matter rest. While Ike was being processed at the courthouse, Wyatt Earp found himself face-to-face with Tom McClory, another Cochise County cowboy, just outside the building. The two men confronted each other directly, and Earp inquired if the cowboy was armed. McClory responded with a dismissive sneer, claiming he was unarmed, yet Earp clearly observed a firearm concealed in the man's waistband. Earp swiftly drew his own sidearm and, as was his custom, struck McClory on the head with it. Shortly thereafter, 3 additional cowboys, Ike's brother, Billy, Tom's brother, Frank, and Billy Claiborne, arrived in town. The presence of 5 irate cowboys, at least 3 of whom were armed and dangerous, instilled apprehension in Wyatt Earp. He resolved to forcibly disarm them. He summoned his brothers Wyatt and Morgan, along with Doc Holliday, and together they proceeded across the dusty streets of Tombstone towards the OK Corral. As the Earps advanced through Tombstone, they encountered an agitated Sheriff John Bean. According to Wyatt, Bean asserted that he had already disarmed the cowboys, a statement that proved to be false. Nevertheless, the Earps resolved to verify the situation themselves. The Earps eventually confronted the cowboys, and the ensuing gunfire commenced without delay. The precise instigator of the first shot remains a matter of debate, although most eyewitness accounts indicate that the initial 2 shots occurred almost simultaneously. It was evident that both parties were eager for a confrontation. When the shooting ceased, Doc Holliday sustained a severe bruise on his holster from a bullet. Wyatt Earp had been wounded in the calf, and Morgan Earp sustained injuries to both of his shoulders. Wyatt Earp, remarkably, emerged from the exchange unharmed. While the Earps sustained injuries, the cowboys endured far graver consequences. Tom McClory, Frank McClory, and Billy Clanton all perished on the dusty ground. As the wounded Earps retreated from the open lot, they encountered Sheriff John Bean once more. The agitated lawman declared, "I must place you under arrest." "On what grounds?" Wyatt Earp inquired, pausing momentarily. He turned, met Bean's gaze directly, and stated unequivocally, "You have misled me. You assured me these men were disarmed. My intention was to disarm them." This remark served as a decisive declaration. Ike Clanton exerted every effort to have the Earps and Doc Holliday incarcerated. To his credit, they were responsible for the deaths of 3 men. The presiding judge meticulously reviewed sworn testimony from over 30 individuals. Among them was Wyatt Earp's sworn adversary, Sheriff Bean, who, in his characteristic duplicity, asserted the cowboys' complete innocence. He claimed they had raised their hands and emptied their pockets to demonstrate they were unarmed, but that the aggressive Earps had initiated the gunfire. This account was an outright fabrication. Fortunately for the Earps, numerous other witnesses observing from windows provided crucial accounts of the day's events. Ultimately, the judge determined there was insufficient evidence to bring charges against the Earps and Doc Holliday. However, this did not preclude repercussions for their actions. They not only acquired a reputation as ruthless killers, but the remaining cowboys were not prepared to passively accept the demise of their comrades. The gang began orchestrating their retribution, and they would soon achieve it. Merely a few months following the gunfight at the OK Corral, Virgil Earp was ambushed on Tombstone streets. A blast from a shotgun struck his arm and shoulder, leaving him severely disabled. While Morgan Earp was engaged in a game of billiards in a saloon, a group of assailants fired upon him through the windows from the darkened street. One of the projectiles struck his spine, and he succumbed 40 minutes later. This tragic event caused Virgil Earp to reach his breaking point. On the very day his brother Morgan took his final breath, Wyatt Earp abandoned his role as a lawman. He lost all faith in the established justice system and resolved to personally avenge his brother. He assembled a posse of 8 men and pledged to exact his vengeance upon the Cochise County Cowboys. This marked the commencement of the notorious Earp Vendetta Ride, an undertaking that would claim the lives of several more men before its conclusion. The Earps pursued the remaining cowboys into the desolate wilderness. Ironically, one of the men they hunted was Curly Bill Brocius, the very individual whom Wyatt had saved from a lynching slightly over a year prior. When the Earps finally apprehended them, another violent confrontation erupted. Curly Bill himself fired directly at Wyatt, narrowly missing him. Wyatt Earp, maintaining his customary composure, did not flinch. He returned fire, striking Curly Bill in the chest from a distance of 50 feet. Following the gunfight that resulted in the deaths of Curly Bill and several other cowboys, the Earps felt a measure of closure. However, they soon faced a new predicament. It is important to recall that the Earp Vendetta Ride operated entirely outside the bounds of the law, and one cannot simply engage in lethal retribution without consequence. John Behan had assembled his own pursuit party, and they were actively tracking the Earps. Behan's posse came within sight of the Earps, but never managed to close the distance. Although the Earps were prepared to stand their ground if necessary, Behan's men did not ultimately locate them. The Earps eluded them and managed to slip out of Arizona into New Mexico. Eventually, Behan was compelled to abandon the pursuit, and Wyatt Earp escaped accountability for his harsh brand of justice. The conclusion of the Earp Vendetta Ride signaled the end of an era in multiple respects. Not long after departing Arizona, Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday experienced a significant disagreement that led to the dissolution of their friendship. They went their separate ways, encountering each other on only 2 further occasions throughout their lives. During their final meeting, approximately 5 years later, Wyatt's wife, Josephine, observed that Holliday was a mere shadow of his former self. He was a gaunt figure, racked by a persistent cough, and struggled to remain upright. For exclusive benefits such as early access to new video releases, prompt responses to your comments, and a voice in shaping future content, please consider becoming a FactNate member. Moreover, your contributions are vital in sustaining the channel. Click the link provided in the description for additional details. John Behan and Wyatt Earp shared at least one commonality: their taste in women. Upon arriving in Tombstone, Behan brought his wife with him, a woman named Sadie Mansfield, who worked as a prostitute. Most people, however, knew her by a different name, Josephine Earp. It transpired that Sadie discovered a romantic involvement with another woman shortly after her arrival in Tombstone, prompting her to leave Behan. Not long thereafter, townspeople began to notice Sadie spending considerable time with one of the Earps, a man already recognized as Behan's most significant rival. It seemed that if Earp could not attain Behan's position, he could at least claim Behan's woman. Following his exploits in the Wild West, Earp relocated to San Francisco with Sadie, who by then was known as Josephine Earp. They maintained a common-law partnership for over 4 decades until Earp's passing. Wyatt Earp spent his final years in Los Angeles, serving as an unpaid film consultant in Hollywood and endeavoring to have a movie produced about his life. After a tumultuous existence characterized by gunfights and saloon altercations, he died peacefully from dropsy at the age of 80. He had outlived all of his siblings and left no children. By that time, he was one of the last remaining figures from the Wild West, and the era of outlaws and gunslingers seemed like a distant memory. If you enjoyed this FactNate presentation, please give it a like and subscribe for more remarkable narratives. Would you like to influence our upcoming coverage? Join our membership program by clicking the link in the description for exclusive advantages. Your support is immensely valuable to us. Thank you for watching. We will see